So you know about this story, right? People are very, very much aware of the United Nations expert sounds alarm over contem oh god. UN experts sound alarm over contemporary forms of slavery in Canada. So we showed this before. Uh we've done this video where the United Nations called out Canada specifically because our corporations, our billionaire class, and politicians are exploiting their open borders policy to flourish their needs of cheap labor. And to the point that even a UN representative calls out Canada specifically, saying you're acting in contemporary forms of slavery because you're bringing people in and exploiting them for cheap labor. So it's no surprise. And it's no surprise to people that go to these regular establishments, primarily places like Tim Hortons. Tim Hortons, very iconic Canadian brand. You go in for your coffee or donut, double double with your maple dip. That's usually my order. Everyone's very familiar with Tim Hortons, and it's been going downhill. It's been going downhill for many years, but people are waking up to this. So Shazzy points out Tim Hortons accused of exploiting loopholes to replace Canadian workers with foreign hires. 1,131% spike. Huge increase in foreign workers at Tim Hortons since 2019. 7.7% jobless. Toronto's high unemployment ignored as locals lose out. LMIA abuse. Companies using loopholes to undercut. So LMIA, that is the uh, temporary foreign workers. That's one of the measures that they're using that companies can reach out to use foreigners to bring into their companies if they feel like they don't have enough people applying to those jobs. And companies like Tim Hortons and bigger companies like Loblaws, Walmart, and factories have used and exploited this. They're purposely undermining and lying to the governments to use and exploit so they can not pay Canadian workers so they can lay them off and not pay them a decent subsidized wage and use foreign hires for cheap labor. And Tim Hortons being one of the biggest ones because it's not exactly Tim Hortons that's at fault here. It's the shareholders. It's the parent company of Tim Hortons, which is Restaurant Brands International, that are exploiting this. And they also own Burger King, they own Popeyes, all these franchises that are exploiting using temporary foreign workers to undermine Canadian workforce. Um, so here's Six Buzz TV also points out in Ontario alone, Tim Hortons hired at least 714 temporary foreign workers last year, compared to just 58, sorry, in 2019. However, about 92% of those jobs in 2023 were listed under holding companies that didn't use the Tim Hortons name. So, this is how they're able to get away with it. Because again, it's not primarily Tim Hortons that's pushing this and abusing this measure, as it is the holding companies, the shareholders, the parent companies that are only doing this to exploit cheap labor so they can make the most profit and cut labor costs. And we have seen this not just with Tim Hortons, but many corporations in Canada here, just like the United States, in this form of contemporary slavery. This is the new modern slavery where they bring people in. It's insourcing. It used to be companies would go overseas and exploit them through sweatshops and villas over there. But now they're bringing people here. Now they're exploiting people. They're diminishing their lands. They're going after. They're sanctioning them. So they're forcing people to leave their homeland to come to this country and then dangling a carrot from their nose, promising them a job for cheap labor. And this is where it all plays out. So here's just a graph of this. And you notice how, and I stated this before, look at the projection here. So 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, fairly balanced. Kind of a little bit of increase. Little bit of increase, but fairly maintained. 2020, 2021, kind of the same thing. A little bit of an increase in 2021. Again, during the time when we locked everything down. And we laid off people. We laid off people, but we also brought in people to replace those laid off people during a pandemic. Get 2022 and 2023. Look at how much of a shift that was. And Justin Trudeau and Mark Miller explained to people that because they saw this, they saw the increase, and they saw that they were rubbing it in our faces, that they're exploiting the labor market to get cheap foreign laborers, to cut down costs for the billionaire class. And Mark Miller and Justin Trudeau said, oh, we have to secure the economy, because they were worried that Canada was going to go into a recession, which it is, technically. Technically, it's still in a recession since the pandemic. But since they shut everything down, locked down the businesses, fired a bunch of people, laid them off in response to the pandemic, they then brought in illegal foreigners to replace those people. So now you understand the whole connection of this and why it frustrates me that the temporary foreign worker program was primarily abused and exposed during the pandemic. It's not just something that's been going on for years. And I know people that are saying, well, they're doing the jobs that most Canadians won't be doing. People are just lazy. People don't want to, clean toilets or anything like that. Trust me, you give people a decent wage and benefits, they'll do anything. They will do anything. But because the billionaire class, because the corporate capture of our parliament system, because of the corruption that all this involves, the globalized corruption, they are doing this deliberately under our noses. We're all being exploited to get cheap labor so that the billionaire class, the shareholders, the stock owners of these companies can make a quick buck. So they can cut back labor costs and profit off the exploitation of all these people. And it happened in 2022 to 2023 and continues to increase. Continues to increase just as we're getting out of the pandemic. Kind of ironic that they shut everything down. They laid off people, told them that, hey, you got to rough it out. We'll give you something. We'll give you some sort of severance in the form of SERP. But then, when things open up again, oh, look at that. The job's already been replaced. Oh, I'm sorry. That factory job that went to a Canadian citizen that probably got a decent wage and benefits and unionized, oh, that's gone now. Now they got cheap foreign labor. Guess what? Now they can't unionize. They can't organize and demonstrate that employees actually have power. And sadly, what we saw with Amazon, they shut down the warehouses, shut everything down in Quebec because the Amazon workers got together, organized, and voted to unionize. And because of that, Amazon decided, no, forget it. It goes to show you how exploited this is. And it's amazing that people will defend this. It's amazing that people will defend Amazon for what they did. It really is amazing that, they got what they deserve, and people that want to fight for a living wage, they're going to hurt the system. Companies are going to leave anyway. So, in that logic, more and more people need to be exploited. Hey, why even have wages? Why even have weekends? Why even have unions? It really is baffling that people look at this and they defend it. It shows how conditioned or brainwashed or manipulated they are. Like, like a Stockholm syndrome patient. So here's this guy, Earl Weber. So this warehouse that looks like an Amazon fulfillment center is almost entirely devoided of workers because the criminal illegal aliens are hiding from potential workplace immigration enforcement. Some businesses use almost entirely criminal illegal aliens, flooding the market with cheap labor and displacing American citizens from possible jobs. Just like what's happening in Canada, just like what's happening in the UK. They did this purposely. The billionaire class orchestrated together to say, F everybody. We don't want more workers empowered. We don't want things like the 50s where people had a decent job that they could afford to raise a family and have that nuclear family escapade. They don't want that. They just want to screw everybody, get cheap labor, and exploit people in the process. So this is an Amazon warehouse where it was entirely illegal criminal aliens exploiting them for labor. And now because there's the roundup happening in New York, in the United States, here's how it turned out. Look at this. Look at that. Nobody. Empty. Empty. It goes, look at this again. Nobody's there. Not a single person there. And yet somehow Amazon gets away by saying, oh, we hire everybody. We're the largest employer. We get benefits. Everybody can start at $25 an hour. And next thing you know, they're hiring migrants, illegal criminals, to displace the workers that could get those union benefits, that could get that $25 an hour. Because if you're working temporarily and you're an illegal alien with just a visa, we don't have to consider you an employee. We don't have to consider you giving benefits. So this is how they're purposely exploiting people, left, right, and center. And it's right in front of your faces. Here's another one. This is Wall Street Ape saying that the extent to which the American worker has been replaced by cheap illegal migrant labor is shocking. This job site, so a construction site, employee is reporting that only 8 out of the 43 workers showed up due to immigration checkpoints and raids. This is where all of our jobs have gone to illegal labor. So only 8 people showed up to a construction job. And again, you hear all these people. You hear people on the liberal side of things are, was it Ozzy Osbourne's daughter saying, oh, well, if you harbor up the illegals, who's going to clean your toilets? Who's going to cut your grass? Who's going to do the gardening work? I don't know. Why don't you hire an American to do it? Again, give anyone a decent wage and treat them like a person. They will do any job. They will do any job. But you doing this purposely is actually, it's more exploitive than you imagine. That people like the Osborne daughter saying that Trump using catching up illegals and deporting them. Oh my God, now we can't use cheap labor anymore. Oh my God, what are companies going to do now? That's very much anti-American. That's very much anti-MAGA. That if you're supporting and you're demonizing Trump or demonizing someone that says, hey, why are corporations exploiting people for cheap labor when clearly you could hire Americans? Clearly you can hire people. Even look at Elon Musk. Look at Vivek Ramaswamy. Oh, all these Americans are just so lazy because they watch Saved by the Bell instead of reading the books. Why don't you train those people then? Why don't you train Americans to do that job instead of exploiting the system to bring in illegals for cheap labor? Because that's exactly what you're doing. It has nothing to do with skill set. It has nothing to do with advancement. You're not getting the best, the cream of the crop. It's whoever we can get that could do the job more efficiently at a cheaper cost. And if it's not illegal labor, it's going to be AI, because that is how much these corporations are exploiting the ideals of labor, the idea of a workforce. The middle class is being hollowed out by people like this, by people that just exploit the whole immigration process. So this guy, Wall Street Mave, says this is excellent news. I'm assuming this is a joke. Construction jobs used to be solid middle class income for American citizens. People with a high school degree could make great money. Yeah, that you could have one job. I remember a time going back. There was TV shows. There was one called Married with Children. People may remember from the late 80s, early 90s, starring Ed O'Neill and Katie Seagal and Christina Applegate and I forget the guy's name. Anyway, the guy that plays Bud. That TV show was very interesting because as raunchy and, humorous and kind of dark comedy it was interesting the fact that a shoe salesman, Ed O'Neill, playing Al Bundy as a shoe salesman, was able to maintain a house in Chicago and support his family. You can't do that today. You cannot do that today. Especially in America. You cannot do that today. On one income, on a shoe salesman, you can barely get by. And that's because the billionaire class purposely exploited the circumstances, made it twice as hard for you because they have no obligation. They don't care at all for the middle class of America. They don't care about the working class. So they do everything in their power to exploit you, to abuse you, to psychologically torture you, and to abuse you worse than people. And there are peoples that are kissing up to that. They're thankful of that. Like, again, Stockholm Syndrome patients. Instead of looking at this and analyzing the fact that, oh my God, things that were supposed to be better than the 1950s. I thought we're supposed to be improving. What happened to the Jetsons future we're supposed to have? Oh, wait, that's not happening because the billionaire class doesn't want you to have a prosperous future. They don't want you to have a prosperous now. They want to exploit you and abuse you in every means and term. Then the illegal aliens started flooding into the country. They work for subcontractors who don't check paperwork and pay cash under the table. This is one example of how the middle class in the United States is hollowed out. Let's get Americans back to work in construction jobs. Bingo. Bingo. And to people like Vivek Ramaswamy and all these other people that, Americans are too stupid to do those jobs, or they're too lazy, or they don't want to clean toilets or that, then find ways to get people and bridge that divide so that they can go clean toilets that they wanted. Again, it's not that hard. Give them a decent wage, maybe a couple benefits here and there. Boom. You can get anybody. And considering the high unemployment on top of the exploitation of this, you know exactly that the billionaire class, the mafia that really controls everything, explicitly don't care about America. Just like how it's happening in Canada, just like it's happening in the UK. They have no obligation to serve the country that they're partaking in. They don't care about this at all. And that is why they want open borders. That is why they want to exploit and bring people into these countries. That's why they want to burn and have natural disasters and then sell off the land to a bunch of subcontractors to build these large apartment buildings so we're all complex together. It's a big giant club. You and I ain't in it. And we're just the lab rats, the guinea pigs that have to suffer through all this. And this is exactly why we have such a horrible immigration problem. And so many people don't see this. So many people don't see this. But luckily, there's people now, now that this migrant roundup is happening, obviously now people are seeing that, hey, warehouses are empty. There's not enough people on construction. Maybe that's because the company should have hired American citizens. And instead of blaming the immigrant for stealing your job, why don't you go after the company that handed off your job to that immigrant? Because that person is just like you and me trying to survive and maybe supporting his family, or maybe he's trying to better himself. That's how we're all being exploited.